Hello and welcome to the aForm Show, the premier podcast for all things architecture and design across the MENA region. Welcome to your tribe. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Marija Krsmanovic, Senior Architect at LWK PARTNERS, based in Dubai, with a global background that spans Slovenia, Brazil, Germany, Qatar, and over a decade in the UAE. Her journey has been focused on design excellence whilst maintaining a balance across her life goals. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So welcome to the show. Great to have you on. So when we were kind of going through your profile, one of the things that we've noticed is either you like traveling or something has happened where your career seems really curated quite literally across the world. It's not just specific markets, but even places I didn't think an architect would want to go. But it seems like you've sought these places out for some reason and wanted to work on types of projects. So I think that's a good place to start. Why the curiosity across the world?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because someone would think it was intentionally curated while it was purely spontaneous and sort of a life was just happening. I would say it's just curiosity and openness. And I grew up in Serbia. I'm from Belgrade. I grew up during the time that was very hectic, to say at least, like a war with Yugoslavia, bombing. And I was growing up with a lot of people very sort of intentionally having in their mind that in their future, they're going to be like living abroad. And I wasn't one of those people, but somehow along the path, it happened. And my first sort of international experience was kind of neighborhood. It was in Slovenia. I had internship with very good office, Bev Perovic. It was really nice experience and sort of first professional context working in an office. And basically I came as an intern, but it was very hands-on. I worked with my colleague on a competition in Belgrade. So it was like very practical experience. And then after that, I went to Brazil. So that was kind of happened also spontaneous.
But if I can, sorry to ask, but if Belgrade to Brazil is
a jump,
is a big like zero gravity moon step jump, like halfway across the world kind of jump.
Totally.
So when you say spontaneous, was it, there was an opportunity that came up and you took it, or, was it?
It was connected with some personal sort of development.
Right.
But going to Brazil, it was a jump. It was geographical jump. It was time zone jump. It was literally, I couldn't even talk with my family back home because it was such a big time difference that when I would wake up, they would go to sleep and vice versa. So, and I went to Brazil very naively thinking that people will be so excited that I'm coming from Europe and they're gonna sort of be open and friendly. So that was 2009. And at the time I was in a city it's not like Rio or Sao Paulo. So they are very like also metropolitan. It was a city which is still like 4 million people living, but it was very challenging to sort of to go day by day, having in mind that I started to work right away and I didn't know the language. And I felt a bit like an alien there at the beginning because I think they weren't used to Europeans and like how I was dressed, how I was looking. Although Brazil is so diverse that I thought I could even pass as a Brazilian. But that was really interesting. And like Brazil as a country is so big and so rich culturally. And I was really lucky to work in an office that my boss had international experience. So he lived abroad. He was in Japan working and living. So he understood what it means to be a foreigner as well. And it was beautiful. I loved it as an overall experience. It was tough in terms of personality, in terms of going outside of your comfort zone completely, to the fact that it would pass a day and I wouldn't interact with anyone. People were very shy. that was the case. They weren't open to speak English, although the office was very cool, young architects, graphic designers. So it was a bit lonely, but definitely now when I think about that experience, it brings me smile. And even later on, when I was on master's, we had like a study trip to Brazil, and actually we came to visit that office and we organized the gathering. Very so cool. It's nice to see, at least there, like there was a quite nice balance between professional and personal life, and it was very friendly environment. Like when I look now as observer, as outside, you know, like social gatherings, like cooking and then sort of sharing the projects. And even office itself was in a space which actually there was a graphic designer, there were a couple of architecture offices. So even the way they work together was in a collaborative spirit, and they share sort of like work engagement on projects. So that was quite refreshing to see that kind of collective spirit that was happening over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Brazil, and then I think you sort of came back east towards the world, I think.
Yeah. There was a crisis after that. And basically I wanted to work, but there were no jobs. That was 2009. And I went for master's for 2 years in Frankfurt, in Städteschule. It's really like good master's for architecture. It's adjacent to art school in Frankfurt, and we were only like 13 per year.
Oh,
and dean
very
was
small batch.
Very small. So it was very intimate, and the dean was Ben van Berkel. So
shout out you in studio.
Yeah. Previous dean was Mirales. Like there was a lot of names. So the fact the school was famous, also some of the jury members were like coming from abroad. Some of the like really famous sort of names like Beatrice Colomina, Mark Vigley, Jeffrey Kipnis. So that was completely mind-blowing experience. It was like really gymnastic for the brain, to the point that all of us would ask ourselves, okay, what are we doing here? Because sometimes the tasks wouldn't be really touchable, like architecture-wise. It was very mind sort of expanding, going beyond abstraction, graphical space, and so on. So I would say that those 2 years in Germany were really game changer for me. I wouldn't say in terms of architecture per se, but as a person. And it really shaped me of who I am today as an architect and as a human.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So I guess the question which is on my mind is, if you sort of, for the listeners, if you sort of had to give, your top 3 learnings, for example, having gone through this exercise wherein it seems like you seek the uncomfortable, which is cool. I'm a big fan of that. What were sort of the key things that you learned, which have now almost become like principles, if you may, for the way that you design, for the way that you approach life, for the way that you approach your career? Anything that you can share with someone who's thinking of maybe doing the same thing?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. And I think these lessons you kind of grasp in full sort of spirit afterwards, not at the time they're happening. So I think it really helped me enrich and expand my mindset. Growing up in Serbia, I think I was quite exposed to homogeneous environment, sets of thinking, which is natural, I think, for all of us growing up, if sort of the environment is not that diverse.
Yeah.
So I had some beliefs that I discovered by the time also they are not necessarily mine. There is something you inherit, right?
Yes.
Through your parents, through the school, and so on.
Yes.
So I think being exposed to different working environments, cultures is really one of the fastest way to expand your mindset and to enrich the way you think, the way you operate, the way you deal with people. And then that actually influences also your design. So that I would say it's a really was big lesson for me. And I feel really lucky that actually that was my journey. And I would encourage like young listeners really to take any opportunity to take them out of the comfort zone. And basically, even if it's a short experience abroad, I think it's something that can really shift perspective of your personality.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm imagining, having worked across these multiple cities, of course, you have different things like different building codes and client requirements and so on. But I would think something which I think would have been quite cool is, and this could be the nerd in me talking, but generally how different materials come together, right? Because I'm assuming you would have first-hand exposure to proper structural timber construction. Of course, when you go to other parts of the world, there's different materials there. Place like the Middle East, there's typically, concrete, steel, glass, that kind of thing. So do you think, and again, this is an open-ended question, do you think that sort of exposure to not just design, but even how, construction happens or how, contracts are put together, do you think that exposure was also valuable?
I would definitely say so. I mean, I wasn't, as a junior, let's say at the beginning, I wasn't exposed to all the parts, but definitely the use of materials is something which is very different. And more than that, while you were talking, like what crossed my mind is just sort of interface between interior, exterior. Because of the climate, for example, Brazil has a lot of these in-between spaces, and it's just wonderful how they use it and how it's embedded in design language. So that's also something we try to question in our office here in LWK, like making sure, which there's plenty of offices here also talking about it, and individuals of the comfort and the climate, and just how we can enrich the spaces beyond, obvious, like inside and outside. So that was definitely like one of the nice parts of it, right? And I wasn't even aware of it until coming to Middle East,
right,
where you deal with a lot of constraints in terms of the materials and climate, which we are all aware. Yeah.
Do you, and this is more again just out of curiosity, I found that the more of these episodes that I do, I tend to ask architects especially about how they feel regarding the climate in Dubai, because we all work here, we live here, we do projects here, etc. I ask them how they think about the climate and how they think about indoor outdoor spaces. I find that they typically give me two answers, right? One of them is, oh, it's too hot, or there's no point, or we'd rather just give more air-conditioned GFA space, or we might even give it to more public space, but just having a transitionary space, who's really going to use it? That's one side. But then there's the other side, who's like, yeah, for about 7 or 8 months in the year, it's actually not too bad. And for 5 months, it's definitely really, really good. And for the other 3 months, maybe, we can sort of transition it into something else. So there seems to be one side that doesn't want to do anything about it. And there's one side that wants to completely go down that road. So by your smile, I think I know which side you fall on. So
which one?
Probably the one that wants to use it, I think.
Yeah, I'm definitely the second group. As a user and as an architect, it doesn't matter in the end in terms of but I personally love the weather here. I come from Europe, which has 4 seasons, and I'm one of the people that I have to say I don't miss it at all. I love that here is every day sunny. It really...
Autumn leaves and snow, no? Really?
No, I don't miss it. I love that it's sunny, it's energetic, it's like spirit elevating. So I really think there is like untapped also area that can be explored more in terms of outdoors in Dubai and how we use the spaces, not to talk about walkability, bicycles. Definitely there has been improvement lately, but still there's a long way to go. Exactly. Yeah. And the fact that city is flat, that the networks, the pedestrian bicycle networks can be so much more enhanced and used. We can reduce the traffic. So definitely I see a lot of improvements that can be done with the right initiatives, but I love it here. And I think in terms of the weather, definitely we all know what summer is, but then on the other hand, other places you have winter. Right. So it's too cold to do something. So it's just accepting place for what it is. And from my side, I came to terms with Dubai very early.
I accept the heat. It's fine. No, there's actually something quite interesting, which is, again, this is not really architecture related, but a colleague of mine was telling me that if you've been in Dubai for a while, like Like, for example, you have time seems to go quite fast here. Like before you know it, you're like,
sure.
oh, like 2 years have gone, 5 years have gone and things like that. And he actually had a theory. He's like, I think it's because there are no seasons. I think it's if you live in another country where you have definitive summers and winters and, autumns and springs and things, your mind sort of registers it more. It's more along the lines of not circadian rhythm, but more like, the way that the seasons go through and the way that you experience it. Here, we typically tend to have, it's summer and it's kind of not summer. Like that's maybe the 2 seasons that we have. And because of that, time just seems to go a lot faster. That could be. There's no science behind this. This is just his opinion, I would think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's something that I thought about recently because, again, referring back to Europe, which is I'm most familiar with, you have seasons, and beyond the seasons, you have even your sort of rhythm follows those seasons. So spring is more about waking up after the winter. Summer is like this, almost like a little bit of laziness and the vacation mood. Autumn is again like getting back into this working spirit dynamics. And then winter is something in between, and season and holiday. So it's like season also follows your rhythm and your activities, while here, on the other hand, the activity doesn't stop. And throughout the whole year, it's really fast pace. That's what I would say, that I would feel like the time passes faster here because we are always quite in a loop. And also working sort of internationally, you have different holidays, different seasons. So always somewhere is moving, right? There is no actual stop as such. So that made me think also in relation to kids' vacation and how they have these designated breaks, how it would be nice in a working environment to have these pauses, not just, 2 weeks vacation.
Everyone has to take summer off. It's too hot to work. We'll see you after the summer.
Something like that.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. No, but you strike me as a designer who's very passionate, I must say. So I ask all passionate designers, there must be in your mind, and it's a very difficult question to ask, so I'll kind of simplify it down, right? Do you believe in work-life balance? It's again, there are 2 camps, right? There are some designers who say, if I'm being paid to come in at 9 and leave at 6, I should come in at 9 and leave at 6, right? That's what I'm paid to do. That's my job. And that's what I want to do. Then there are the other side of designers who are like, but how can you ask me to be creative at 9:01 and then stop being creative at 5:02? My mind just doesn't work that way. And I'm not saying that, we need flexible hours or nothing like that. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just saying in such a fast-paced environment, is it even possible? Do you think there is work-life balance? Do you think there's a better terminology that we should be looking at? What are your thoughts on it?
I definitely believe there's a work-life balance. And in my case, I really aim for it. And I don't think it's a matter of saying, from 9, I'm an architect, and from 6, I'm a mom. So I don't think it's about the division of roles, because all these roles are embedded in us, and that's who we are. I think it's about sort of balancing the two and making sure they equally develop. And that's something I noticed, at least in Dubai. That's my impression. I might be wrong, but we talk a lot about career growth, career development. And I feel there is no enough conversation about personal development in the way we invest in ourselves. And I really believe that when that becomes a mainstream conversation, a lot of things will change. Our workplaces, from where, how we work. And it fundamentally comes down that when you are a happier person with yourself, you're gonna design better, you're gonna influence other people better. And that's something I also try to sort of raise a little bit, like in our office as well, sort of conversation about it, because I think it's really, really important.
So if there are, again, listeners who are saying, you know what, Marija, I agree, right? I agree that we don't talk a lot about personal development. I am now a designer that's been working for 4 to 5 years. I feel a bit stuck. I'm doing the same projects and things which were exciting maybe 3 years back. Now I can, crack out a floor plan in an hour, and it's kind of getting repetitive. I want to work on myself. What should I be doing? Tactile things that someone can do.
I mean, I don't want to I don't want to get in a danger sounding like any guru, but I think, again, especially in Dubai, we are used to this fast rhythm, and it's very, very easy to get caught up in that. So this routine and being busy throughout the day, and there is intensity, and that you can see across all the industries. I have friends in different fields, like there's a pattern. So I would really encourage first is like, which I did a couple of years back, is like also basically pausing and asking yourself, what does success mean to you? And any part of the world, if you go, there is a certain societal sort of expectation. There's a sort of formula, let's say. What does it mean to be successful, your career, the material things, and so on. And also in Dubai, it's very easy to get caught up with these things. So I think it's really important to, like, on a personal level, just question what are the things that they mean to you, what is the definition of success, and what basically energizes you, what fulfills you. So I don't want to sound like philosophical, but it's actually very simple.
Yeah, it's kind of true, because if you look at it that way, there is no one set answer, because everyone's different. Everyone has their own journey that they're going on. Everyone has this, different expectations. So I think if everyone was more self-aware and, like you said, actually ask themselves, what is it? What is success? Where do I want to be?
Yeah.
I think, you probably get some good answers from that. Whether you do anything about it, that's a different thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a starting point, because without asking yourself questions, it might be that you are on the right path, right?
Yeah.
So just think it's important to sort of stress also non-linear paths. They are not non-ambitious, but it's just different sort of ambition. And that also continues a little bit on the previous sort of things that I said, that I feel they can be a bit a broader conversation about it.
Yeah.
Even on the sort of level of office and just the mindsets and how we practice.
Okay. Very interesting. I almost now want to ask, I think I get a good sense, and the listeners get a good sense of what motivates you, what your passions are. How does that translate to your projects? What I mean by that is, you clearly are someone who's, self-aware. You're always thinking about, the why of most things. So when it comes to your projects, do you carry the same sort of thinking into there as well? Wherein you might read something in a brief where you're like, maybe could we look at this? Is that something that you're into?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if it's a project that it's a competition or it's pre-concept concept, so it's more like a visionary project, I always try also to question the brief and to understand. I mean, obviously, you always have to respond to the requirements of what client wants. But if there is a certain sort of window to question a typology or a use of space, I mean, we were able on a couple of projects to do so. And I think these are exciting moments and creative moments where you go out of ordinary a bit. And I think that these are nice moments as a sort of achievement of an architect. For me, that's something that excites me and drives me. But if it's a project which is more, let's say, a long-term project, full scope, lead consultant, mostly how I try to contribute with my personal development is people dealing. So the way I deal with the client, the way I deal with consultants, how sort of I'm trying to bring all the parts, all the pieces together and making sure there's a good flow in terms of production, if possible. But I always try to keep this human approach whenever possible and to create relationships. I like to establish a relationship with whoever I work with. So it just makes things easier. We all have to get the job done. But if there is a nice, friendly sort of communication, it just makes things easier.
I think, again, this is something which I was talking about lately. I think it's much better, even if because let's face it, all projects at some point face some kind of friction, right? Either pressure from a client, pressure from a contractor, or whatever it may be. There's always, I mean, no project that I've ever known has ever gone smoothly where everyone agreed and all of that. So I get that. But I think what I tell people, like you said, it's much better to face that as a team together, where you know that everyone's working towards the same thing. No one's working against you. No one's trying to, how should you say, step on your toes. Everyone's just trying to go the same direction. And I think if you establish that via relationships with the different team members that you have and all the stakeholders that you have, it makes the project much more fun. You might still have the same problem, but at least it's a lot more fun to deal with that problem, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important. I'm not saying I manage that always, but to take things lighter, because it's easy again to get stressed out.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure. We all know what means working here. But it's also trying to understand that in the same time as you are getting pressure from the client, he's probably pressured by someone else.
Investors.
So there's a bigger picture as well of something you are not aware about. And I mean, it also always comes down to, again, we are all humans. We are all with our positives and negatives. And as long as the positive aspect is stronger, then it's obviously easier and better. So yeah, I mean, working here is quite challenging. It's challenging, and it's like the deadlines are compressed, the expectations are high. So you have to be very agile and adaptable to any requirements, which if you're open as a personality to it, I think you really grow along the way a lot.
Can I ask you more for, this is almost now zooming out and being a bit more macro. Considering your work experience across the world and so on, you mentioned, how, yes, there are compressed timelines, expectations are high and so on. What's the opposite of that? And what does that look like? Because a lot of our listeners obviously are based, here in the Middle East. Are there parts of the world where timelines are much more, well, not relaxed, but reasonable? And under those conditions, what are the benefits to the projects? What are the benefits to the clients?
Well, I mean, most of my experience is in Dubai, so that's the majority. But what I would say that I was exposed to, I mean, working in Slovenia, it was not similar in terms of the deadlines, but they are sort of looking up to Austria and Germany. So they like order, rigorous, organized sort of approach. So it was very like a straightforward process and like high expectation as well, high quality. Definitely. So I would even find it similar to here, let's say, although here is just the speed is faster because of the demand, let's say.
Yeah.
But I can say again about when I was in Brazil, it wasn't that long, like it was 6 months, but it was like some aspects are interesting to mention. So I worked on a project which was for a group. It's a music group, Wakichi, and basically they are famous. They make their own instruments from natural materials. So it's very instrumental, meditative sort of sound. And we were designing center for them. It's center, sort of music center for the group itself. Yeah, the time of the project was a bit looser. Just everything was a bit like flexible, let's say. I mean, basically they were the client, and just the research part and the design process was like not rigorous. And obviously the way they sort of create the music had to relate somehow to the building itself. So there was a lot of materials, a lot of sort of circular sort of volumes floating with a connecting platform. There was a theater space with the stage that could also open to outdoor. So that was kind of very nice project I had the opportunity to work on, which was very atypical. I mean, always cultural projects are different, but even the requirement and the timeline was very loose.
Right. Because I mean, it's hard to say, right? Because on the one hand, I understand why timelines are tight here and I understand, all of that. But part of me always wonders, would the project turn out different if you actually had, let's say, 4 more weeks in concept, or if you had, 3 more weeks to do some material research, during DD, things like that. Would that have a dramatically different impact on the project? And it's hard to say, right? Because, most people who I speak to, there are projects like you described, wherein it's a lot more loose. And then there are projects here which are like down to the hour, like that's how tight the deadlines are. I always wonder that if this side got a bit more time, would projects look different? Do you think it would?
To be honest, not necessarily. I don't think that there will be fundamental difference. What I think it matters is more setting up intention in the beginning. So from the client and what the project is trying to do. So if I think it's trying to create a bit of bigger impact on as a landmark or as a urban setting. I think in those regards, that's something that might make a difference in terms of the time. But if the project is, let's say, resi, tower, functional, straightforward, like sort of tick, 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 then I feel like a couple of weeks is just a matter of improving the detailing and certain aspects rather than some major decisions.
Change.
Exactly. So I think it's a matter of different types of projects that could influence actually.
Okay, interesting. All right. Normally at this part of the episode is where I like to ask, is there something, we don't need names or specifics or anything like that, but is there something interesting that you're working on at the moment, which is challenging, which you think our listeners might be like, oh, I never thought that could happen? Anything of that nature that's on your mind that you're thinking about?
We are working on a project in Saudi, which we had sort of intense part of working on it. Now there's a little bit of break and then it will
pick back up
sort of resume very shortly. I think that's a really interesting project. I mean, obviously I can't talk too much about details. Everyone knows why. But I think this is one of the projects in the office. We really question typology. We question what building does. And I think the way we also dealt with the ground floor, sort of lifting the building and opening the ground to the public and creating it as a public realm space. I think I'm not saying it's, I don't want to use the word innovative because nowadays a lot of things have been seen, but I think there is certain combination, sort of formula we did, and that potentially it will be really memorable project. And also for the office, it will be amazing exposure because of the program, the requirements, so the consultants we will work with, and just sort of the learning curve will be sort of high, how we will sort of work on the new things. So that's really, really cool project.
Sounds interesting. I am curious to know though, because probably again, when that brief came in, the client probably did not think that was an option.
Definitely.
So I'm curious to know that when they saw that, their initial reaction, were they for it? Were they against it? Did they kind of question it? How did they receive it when they first saw it?
Yeah. I mean, the initial idea, the concept was created by our director, Mitten. And the brief, basically it was first a competition, invited competition, which we won. And it was narrowed down basically to 50% schematic to 2 offices. So it was interesting sort of format, which is not a common as well.
Yeah, that's actually the first time I've heard of that.
Yeah. So almost up to 50% SD, we weren't sure that we will continue with the project. So it's a type of building you either love or you don't love, not to use the word hate. It's a statement.
I don't like it.
Yeah. It's a statement. And I think because of the narrative behind it and what was the concept, I think the client really buy into it and embraced it. And they were very supportive throughout the process, which is not always the case. And it wasn't also extensive optioneering process, but it was really sort of after a couple of options, sort of narrowing down and focusing on one. So I would say the process was very supportive by the client. And I think that's very important
100%.
in the project, that behind there's a client with a vision and allowing architect to express and also contributing. And that becomes sort of their own like a baby, they did together.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful.
No, that's awesome. I'm actually reminded of a conversation that I had with one of my clients a while back, wherein something similar, we did the brief, right? So we had what in our minds was the safe option. Mm-hmm. This is everything that they want, right? It has all the GFAs, efficiencies, and, balcony ratios, and all this is good. They should not have a problem with this. And then we were like, but if we just did this one different thing, which was a fundamental shift, I think it'd be a lot better. So we kind of put this together almost, you can say, like a bit more developed than pre-concept. And we went in, we presented it. The first option, lukewarm response. We're like, okay, yeah, okay, fine, cool. And then we're like, okay, so we have this one other idea. It's not developed, so have no expectation. There are no renders, but this is the idea. And as we walked them through it, we could actually see their eyes like widen, be like, oh, wow, really? Again, I can't say much about it, but they were like, oh, panoramic views? Really? Wow, that's possible? Wow. And that was kind of the excitement that they had. And then a few months later, once the concept was done, the design manager at the time comes to me and he's like, when I wrote this RFP, in my mind, I had like a sort of idea as to what this massing would look like for this building. It looks completely different now. And I'm scared, but I'm excited at the same time. And I told them the same thing. I'm like, I'm kind of scared and excited too. So let's be scared and excited together. So, and that was actually one of the most fun projects that I worked on, actually. It was quite awesome. But yeah, I mean, that made me realize that actually when a project is good and it's built well and everything, yes, of course, a good architect and a good design team and a host of other consultants and everything below have to be good, no doubt. But I think when you see good projects, I don't think good clients get enough credit. People normally forget about them. They were like, oh, the design team there is really good. The facade detailing is really good there. And this is good. But no one thinks that the client actually gave them that leeway.
Yeah, I would even say that it's equally important as architect's input, like to create a space that architects can do the job or give the input they do the best, and sort of encourage them, support them, allow them also on the way, like sort of guide them. So not like full sort of freedom. And that's not what I'm saying, but it's equally important. And definitely, I think some of the projects here in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, like that are really like successfully done in terms of architecture, like for sure they wouldn't be able to be executed without this client determination.
Yeah, true. Because it does, I mean, on the one hand, while it's all well and good to say, it's a good design, there's obviously a lot of other factors that influence it, right? There's a lot of commercials, there's a lot of, well, in our case, sales teams that get involved and things like that. So it does take a brave client team to actually go down that road. You're right. So very interesting. I'm hoping if people are still listening that they are at the very least interested in pushing the brief a little bit rather than just sort of ticking the box. That's the worst thing you can do. I hate doing that. Just doing like,
I mean, sometimes it's necessary and sometimes it's needed and it's okay. But when there is opportunity, it's good to take it.
Yeah. So at this point of the episode, as we're sort of winding down towards the end, this is normally where I like to look forward. So the question to you is, for Marija, what is the goal or the vision or the next schematic phase, if you will, for the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be? What are you sort of working towards now?
That's a hard question.
You can take your time. It's all good.
It's a hard question because, to be honest, when I was younger, when I was a student, I always had a plan, and I had Marija here.
Or 25 here, at 30 I'm going to have this, at 32 I'm going to be this.
Yeah. I have to say I was one of those. But last couple of years, I realized that really didn't work out for me in a manner that I thought it will, as a sort of familiar, secured path, which I think it was just my path. It was my journey that sort of happened to also sort of create a better version of myself. And that was actually the time I kind of decided that going with the flow and being more present and sort of focusing on now is what works better for me. Because I realized that this sort of control is just sort of pre-consumption and something that is kind of fake and actually opposite of control. It's not controllable. And also the plans I take more as, even now I'm having my holiday in 2-3 weeks and I'm still not certain exactly where I'm going to go. And old Marija will be very anxious about it and very nervous. So at the time being, I would say I'm more open to what sort of future brings, to say a little bit as a cliche, but I think when you're open for opportunities and sort of signs on the road, then life might take you to some better paths than the one you thought is for you. So that's what my experience taught me so far. And that's at the moment what I'm guided with.
That is a very beautiful answer. I'm almost getting it was almost like an inspirational answer because I kind of have that problem too, wherein there are some things, I think just by the nature of how you structure your life and your work and everything, you have to be that planned. Like in my case, I think I live by my calendar a bit too much. Like there are times where my family literally put in blocks of time on my calendar and it says nothing. So I'll open, today's a good example. Like on the way here, I was checking my calendar. I'm like, okay, got podcast recording, then got coffee, then got a quick Zoom call. And then I was like, what is this big red chunk? It's from 6 p.m. onwards. And then I was like, oh, it's my dad. It just put nothing. So it means I'm probably going to hang out with him or he's coming over or something's happening. I don't know what. But I do admit that's a bad thing. I'm trying to change it. But yeah, that was a very inspiring answer. Thank you.
Okay, I'm happy.
As a closing tradition on the show, we have something called the aForm tradition, which is basically a question that's asked by a previous guest to the next guest, not knowing who the next guest is.
Okay.
It's completely blind. Sometimes it's a bit of fun. Sometimes it's quite philosophical.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just silly. So you never really know what you're going to get. But I think our trustee, Joelle, has picked out a question for you today.
Okay.
So the question that you have, hold on, let me bring this up correctly. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. It's a fun one.
Okay.
If you could have a superpower only for one day, what would it be?
Oh, wow. I think it would be to travel through time.
Ooh.
Yeah, and just
because then you can keep traveling, right?
Yeah, I have a little bit of, who knows me will laugh now if they're listening to this. I sometimes I'm a bit impatient in spirit. That's something I passed on to my son. But yeah, I think.
Wait, so when you say time travel, are you saying time travel forward in time or time travel backward in time?
I think just in terms of let's say being able to be, let's say you think and you're on another place, on another continent, in that sense. Oh. So I don't have nostalgia toward past times, not in that sense, but more about these sort of movements, not to have maybe too much of transitional time, but sort of from place A to place B to be transported, which that's the first thing that comes to my mind as a superpower.
Interesting. Very interesting. I have thought about that. There was a time when I was doing quite a bit of Riyadh back and forth. And I kept thinking, I'm like, it would be cool if I could just open this door and walk into that office.
Yeah.
And then close the door and I'm back in this office.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than this whole taxi ride and immigration and plane and immigration back here. And granted, it's a very first world problem to complain about. I'm not complaining about it, but I'm just saying that's a pretty cool superpower to have. I would like that one too.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Awesome. So at this point of the episode, I would like to thank you, Marija, for giving us your time. Time is the one thing which we all hold dear, and no one can get more of it. So thank you for giving us your time and being quite honest and actually sharing a lot of things which I think a lot of designers think about, but maybe don't talk about. And I'm hoping that this episode at the very least sparks some conversation with somebody, or at the very least make some designer think, what do I really want? What is success to me? I hope that they ask that question. So thank you so much for coming on behalf of the team. We thank you for your time as well.
Thank you. I really enjoyed. I had a very busy week and I thinking like, one more to-do thing. But actually, I felt it as a break. It was so refreshing and pleasant. And I really was super relaxed and it was super enjoyable and just made me like feel restful after this hour conversation.
Nice.
So thank you.
Awesome. Well, for people who can't listen, I'm actually blushing. As a podcast host, you don't get a lot of compliments like your good clients, but thank you so much for that. That was very kind of you. And for the rest of you guys, we will catch you guys next week. Fellow aFormer, thank you so much for your time. If this episode added any value to you, please share it with anyone who may benefit. If you want to carry on the discussion, please get in touch with us over socials. We are at aForm Show on the gram and hello@aForm.studio on email. That is at aForm Show on the gram and hello@aForm.studio on email. Until next time, stay inspired.